You've seen it before, that golden glowing grid, perfectly repeated shapes stacked with precision that almost feels artificial. A honeycomb. But here's the question that changes everything. Why hexagons? Out of every shape in existence, why did bees settle on that one that mathematicians now call perfect? And even more fascinating, they didn't learn it, they didn't calculate it, nor did they go to school for it. They've just always known. Or at least it looks that way. Because what bees are really doing isn't just instinct, it's something deeper. It's biology, physics, and efficiency all working together in a way that almost feels like intelligence. And today, we're going to break that down. Not just the honeycombs, but the science of bees, the history between us and them, the benefits they give us every single day. And then in part 2, we are going to talk about what happens if they disappear. Part 1. The science, history, and hidden values of bees. When most people think about bees, they think of two things, honey and getting stung. But that's barely scratching the surface. Bees are part of one of the most sophisticated natural systems on Earth. A single hive can hold anywhere from 20,000 to 60,000 bees, and every one of them has a specific role. The queen, the only bee that lays eggs, worker bees, which are all female, handling everything from food collection to construction, and drones, males, whose only role is reproduction. And here's the part that almost doesn't make sense at first. There's no boss, no command center, no leader directing traffic. Instead, bees operate through something called collective intelligence. Each bee follows simple rules, but together those rules create a system that looks incredibly complex and intentional. It's almost like a living organism made up of thousands of smaller parts. Now let's talk about the structure that made bees famous, the honeycomb. At first glance, it just looks satisfying, clean, organized, almost hypnotic. But behind that simplicity is one of the most efficient designs in nature. Each cell is a hexagon, and that is not by random. A hexagon can maximize storage space and uses the least amount of wax. It also distributes weight evenly and prevents gaps between the cells. In other words, it's the most efficient way to store the most material using the least amount of resources. This concept is known as the honeycomb conjecture, a mathematical idea that proves hexagons are the optimal shape for dividing space efficiently. Humans didn't prove this until 1999, but bees have been doing this for tens of millions of years. So how exactly do they pull this off? Are they measuring angles, planning layouts? They got blueprints, they got an architect? Well, not exactly. What's actually happening is even more fascinating. Worker bees produce wax from glands in their bodies. They then chew the wax to soften it, cluster together to generate heat, and then press and shape the wax through repeated movement. And here's where physics steps in. When soft wax is packed tightly together under heat and pressure, it naturally forms hexagonal patterns. So the bees aren't consciously solving geometry problems, they're creating the conditions where geometry solves itself. It's a perfect example of nature working smarter, not harder. Humans have been connected to bees for thousands of years. Ancient cave paintings show people collecting honey long before agriculture even existed. Honey was incredibly valuable. It was used as one of the most earliest natural sweeteners and applied in medicine for wounds and infections, just to name a few. In some cultures, bees symbolize order, discipline, and harmony. But despite all that, we still misunderstood their true importance, because honey, that's just a bonus. Now let's talk about the benefits of honey. Let's slow down for a second and really look at it, because it's not just sugar. Honey is one of the few natural foods that never spoils, contains natural antibacterial properties, is packed with antioxidants, can soothe sore throats and coughs, and helps with wound healing. Ancient civilization used honey as medicine long before modern science explained why it works. Even today, it's still used in certain medical treatments because of its ability to fight bacteria and support healing. In the process of making it, that's just as incredible. Bees collect nectar from flowers, store it in their bodies, break it down with enzymes, and then deposit it into the honeycomb where it slowly thickens in the honey. What you're eating is a result of thousands of tiny coordinated actions. Now here's the part that matters the most: pollination. When bees move from flower to flower collecting nectar, they transfer pollen between plants. This allows plants to reproduce. In that process, it supports a massive portion of the global food supply. We're talking about apples, almonds, blueberries, coffee, tomatoes. Entire crops depend on bees. In fact, bees are responsible for helping pollinate roughly 75% of the world's food crops. A single colony alone can visit and pollinate hundreds of millions of flowers in a season. Without pollination, many plants simply can't produce fruit, which means no bees, no pollination, means no crops. And that's not just food for us. It affects entire ecosystems. Plants feed animals, animals support other species. Bees sit near the very beginning of that chain. So why exactly do bees keep doing all of this? Why fly miles every day, build perfect structures, and work non-stop? The answer is simple but very powerful: the survival of the hive. Everything a bee does is for the colony, not the individual. The hive is the priority, and that mindset, whether it's instinct or evolution, is what keeps the system stable. For millions of years, the system has worked. Even with natural threats, environmental changes, and predators, bees have continued to adapt and survive. Speaking about survival of the hive, you may be asking, why do bees exactly sting us? Well, they don't actually want to sting you. In fact, most honeybees, stinging is the last resort defense mechanism, not an attack. A bee will usually only sting when it feels one of the two things: its hive is threatened, or it is being crushed or trapped. Now, when bees sting you, more times than not, they usually die because the sting is barbed, meaning that it's basically stuck into the skin, and in order for the bee to get out, it's basically cutting it off, and that injury is fatal. Honeybees usually die after stinging mammals. Bumblebees can sting multiple times. And wasp, we don't mess with wasps, okay? We don't mess with the wasp. They're doing that for the survival of the hive. They're doing it. Not for them, but for the hive. Which is just insane. So we're reaching the second part of the video, which is what's going to happen when bees disappear. But first, let's talk about how many bees are there really. But the answer isn't as simple as one number. Globally, scientists estimate there are around 100 million managed honeybee colonies in the world today, and each one of those colonies can contain tens of thousands of bees. On top of that, there are over 20,000 different bee species worldwide. Most of them are wild and not managed by humans. So when we talk about bee populations, we're really talking about a massive complex network of species spread across the entire planet. But here's where it gets complicated. You've probably heard by now that bees are disappearing. And that's true, but only partially. Globally, managed honeybee colonies have actually increased by about 47% since 1990. So at first glance, it does look like things are improving, but that number hides a much bigger problem. Wild bee populations, the ones we don't manage, are declining in many regions. In Europe, around 75% of wild bee species have declined in the past 20 years alone. Some species are now considered threatened or at a risk of extinction. And even managed bees aren't as stable as they seem. So what has exactly changed over the last 20 to 100 years? In the United States, there were about 2.45 million honeybee colonies in 1940. By 2020, that dropped to around 2.5 million. That's roughly a 20% decline over 80 years. Even earlier data shows sharper drops in certain periods. From the late 1940s to the 1980s, hive numbers fell significantly due to pesticides and diseases. And in modern times, colony losses year to year have become more extreme. Some years, beekeepers report losing 30% or more of their hives annually, which is far higher than historical averages. So while the global number of managed colonies has grown, the stability of those colonies have weakened. And wild bees, which are just as important, are declining much more quietly. So now let's talk about if bees just disappeared completely. It wouldn't be instant chaos, it would be a slow burn. Quiet, but devastating. First, crop yields begin to drop, then food becomes more expensive, then certain foods are just going to disappear entirely, and over time, ecosystems are going to begin to unravel. Plants that rely on pollination will die off, and animals that rely on those plants will soon follow. Eventually, it will circle right back to us. Bees aren't just helpful, they are essential. They are the one of the invisible systems holding everything together. And the most unsettling part about that is most people don't even notice nor care about them. So next time you see a bee, don't just brush it off. You're looking at an engineer, a chemist, a biological system that's been perfected over millions of years, quietly doing work that keeps life moving forward. So the real question is no longer why are bees so amazing, it's can we afford to lose them?